Good evening. Thank you so much for joining in. I know we are all learning some new technology in the last few days, and so I hope that you'll be able to hear me. It's so great to see so many people join this. Carol and Steve and Jackie. And so many people. I think we have over 40 people on this call. I think we may even hit close to 75 in terms of who signed up. So once again, thank you so much for taking your time. It's such uncertain times that we're in right now, and just wanted to pause and begin the conversation today with some of thoughts that have really been settling in on me. I had an opportunity this past year to go to a leadership program that was around courageous leadership. And what was interesting to me is the way courage was defined. It comes from, I'll say, pardon the French, because it's le coeur, which was probably butchering it, but it's the old French for heart. And so that courageous leadership is really about leading from your heart. And I just want to read a quick quote from David White around courageousness. Courage is the measure of our heartfelt participation with life, with one another, with a community, a work, a future. To be courageous is not necessarily to go anywhere or do anything except to make conscious those things we already feel deeply, and then to live through the unending vulnerabilities of those consequences. And so what I feel so much about Beacon in the best of times, and certainly in these difficult times, is to feel the heartfelt leadership that all of you bring to this organization. It's why you would take your time when there's so many challenges within your own life to think about not only your own home, but the home and safety of so many others in the community. So thank you for being here. I want to share just an overview of the things that we're doing right now in the last 10 days. And of course, as the news changes daily, how we're adapting to that. And then to lift up some of the things that we're continuing to push forward on our larger, longer term agenda, and ask you to continue to help us make those things happen in our community. As you know, the most impact of any kind of disaster is always hardest hit against those with the least resources. And so we've certainly seen the impact on people experiencing homelessness in our community. We've really been touched by the public leadership that has lifted up homeless shelters as one of the key essential functions in the community. The governor's order that lists a tier 1 in terms of access to childcare and things like that are around healthcare personnel, but tier 2 includes homeless shelter providers. So our staff have access to childcare on a tier 2 level priority in the whole community. And that just means so much to us to know how valuable what we are doing in our community is, honored not just by you as our donors, but by the broader organization. And I also want to say that one reason I think it's held so deeply and that deep community awareness is because of all the work we've been doing over the last years, that we have been heard, and it's having a real impact in this moment of crisis. So let me tell you specifically about Families Moving Forward, our shelter program. We want to thank all of our hosting congregations for everything they've done and continue to do. We have made the decision to move our families into individual motel rooms so that we are able to make sure that they're safe and have individual bathrooms and things like that right now. Our hosting congregations continue to bring meals, which we're very grateful for. They're doing it with just a couple of volunteers to minimize any contact. We keep our social distancing. We are continuing right now to have our program centers open, but those are the kinds of things that could change at any moment in terms of us adapting to the impact on both our families and the resources in the community. So just want to let you know how we're adjusting to make sure that's happening. Putting families in motels is something that we felt that we needed to do. But I do have to share with you, it's cost $5,000 a week for us to do that. And that, of course, is an unexpected expense. And you can start to do the math, right? That's $20,000 a month and $40,000 for 2 months. So those are things that we're concerned about as we continue to feel called to meet that community need. I want to also say that, you know, our number one priority right now is keeping our families, of course, safe and fed. And that right now we're expecting that families will stay in homelessness longer than normal, that trying to find an apartment or a job right now is unlikely. And so our focus turns to the children, and we are working with our school-age children to be able to ensure that they are all able to access the education and be able to have the same resources that non-homeless children are receiving in this difficult time. I want to lift up something that's not directly to Beacon, but something that I think you will all be interested to hear if you haven't already. Hennepin County has stepped forward and authorized an additional $3 million for homeless shelters for seniors and those with underlying health conditions in the shelters, in single adult shelters, to be able to be moved also into individual motels to protect their safety during this crisis. And once again, I think that kind of action, which is unprecedented, the shelter system for single adults in Hennepin County is mostly privately funded. And so to see the county officials step forward and devote those resources is really, once again, an impact from all of the advocacy that we and others in the community have had with our public officials. I want to just touch base a little bit on our housing. Of course, having people in their own home is such an important moment, and so we really celebrate the 600 homes that we've been able to create with your support over the last 20 years. People are safe there, and they are sound, and that is so important to us. A lot of our housing is supportive housing, and right now our services continue to be provided in those facilities. And so, sorry, I thought a message was coming in. We are able to continue to provide those supportive services. At this point, most of our service partnerships have cut back the immediate staff and are working on remoting in and doing texting to make sure that they stay in touch with residents, but usually have at least one person on site. We will have to see if that continues in the new order from the governor in terms of shelter in place. But we have doubled the cleaning that we are doing in all of our 18 apartment buildings. And once again, that's an unexpected expense. And so we're looking at, I don't know, I don't have the exact number yet, but it's probably $10,000 a week that we may have across 18 buildings in terms of increased cleaning expenses. But once again, you know, the health of our residents is foremost in our minds at this point. And so the one that I've been the most concerned about has been American House and Kimball Court. For those of you who may not know, those are each about 75 SROs, meaning single room occupancies in St. Paul. There's shared kitchens and shared bathrooms on each floor. They serve predominantly men, middle-aged and older men that have been chronically homeless and are high risk. And so we are working with the government right now to get those designated as congregate living sites so that if someone did test positive, they would be able to be moved out and isolated for their own safety, but also the safety of everyone else in the building. So once again, we're working as a broad community to make sure that those with the least resources continue to get what they need to be safe in our community. People have asked us around donations, and we really appreciate your offer. We've been getting those calls. What can we do to help? Right now, things have been moving so fast. We have not been set up actually to yet receive donations. So thank you so much for your offer. It has been heard, and we are in touch with our service providers to figure out the specific things that we need to be able to ask you for. And so we will stay in touch with you in terms of in-kind donations like food and medicine and cleaning supplies. So once again, thank you so much for your offers of support. Right now, our main office, in terms of our administrative staff, is going remote. As you can see, I am in our upstairs office in my home at this point. So like many of you, I'm learning this new technology. It's a little hard on my 60-year-old brain, but I think I'm getting there. Hopefully this is working right now. And so we are doing video conferencing and staying in touch. And I know as an extrovert that I am, it's being able to see people, to see the smiling faces out there. And every morning I have a daily call right now with senior leadership because things are moving so quickly that I am. Am I still live? Paul, can you give me a thumbs up? Oh, I'm getting messages here, so I'm going to keep going in the hopes it's working. So I am, sorry, I got to catch my spot here. In terms of video conferencing, so I'm doing a daily call with senior leadership just so we are staying on top of the changes every single day and make sure that we're able to respond to it. One of the things I have to say I have enjoyed is I have met more of my staff's kids, those little kids that kind of pop up in the computer, or the dogs that kind of lean forward. So I feel like I've gotten a new view, and it's been a welcome one in these hard times, to be able to have those moments and to get to be able to see people and stay connected as we all struggle through this time. I wanted to just lift up the financial health of Beacon. We are fortunate to have diversified funding. We have government support, particularly in terms of subsidized rent that helps our residents during these difficult times, or all times, but particularly a safety net during these difficult times. And we have some government support for our supportive services. We have foundation support, and most important is the individual donor support that we get from all of you that makes us such a healthy organization. I just want to thank you so much for all that you've done to make us the organization that we are today. We are a well-managed organization. I am pleased to say we have taken operating reserve seriously over the time, so we are able to weather difficult times. And at the same time, I have to mention that we have difficult decisions to make given the challenges right now. We have $1 million to raise under normal circumstances by June 30 to meet our $3.9 million private fundraising goal for each year. And obviously in these difficult times, we are really counting on those that are able to contribute in terms of helping create some certainty for us in these uncertain times, so that we know that we can keep the essential functions of shelter and home for those of us, for those that count on us in the community. We did do an online appeal last week. Many of you may have seen it, and for those of you who were able to respond, a very special thank you. Over 60 donors responded in the day or two after that email happened, and we were able to raise $11,000 in just a couple of days, and that helps us have those funds. It supports 2 weeks of hotel support for our shelter guests. So once again, thank you so much. I want to just mention that, we want to do our essential functions, and that has been our first priority for what we've been able to do in the last few weeks. But I want to lift up that we continue to stay committed to that long-term vision that all people have a home. I've heard people talking about how do you shelter in place if you have no shelter. And so we remain committed to that momentum despite the challenges around us. We are, as many of you know, 4 of our housing developments were funded last year, and our goal is to be able to close on that financing later this year and begin construction. Like the downturn of the economy in 2008, we're concerned that there could be an impact on tax credit financing, which is one of the underlying financing for affordable housing. And so we are monitoring that quickly. Monitoring it regularly and in touch with people at the national level. And we don't yet have a sense about what this impact will have at this point. So we will continue to monitor that and know that we really have extraordinary expertise within our staff and within our networks to be able to respond to those. When we had the downturn in 2008, we were beneficiaries of the federal stimulus bill that allowed us then to complete Nicollet Square and Creekside Commons. So our public funders have been such an important part in that response, and we certainly hope for that same kind of federal stimulus at a later date from the federal government to fill any gaps that do arise. We continue to move forward with our momentum for 3 family supportive housing developments. We do believe that once again, this crisis has really lifted up how important home is for everyone. And so we are working for Vista 44 in Hopkins and for Prairie Point in Shakopee and a new housing development in North Minneapolis that we haven't named yet. And so as we push those forward, I want to lift up that we expect that there will be land use hearings in Shakopee for Prairie Point. They have been pushed back from April to May, but we will plan to show up. That may be video show up, and we will continue to be in touch with you because our public voices, no matter what format they come in, are still important for us to be able to come out on the other end of this and be able to know that we can bring home forward. Lastly, I just want to mention that we are continuing with public policy. We are part of the conversation. There will be a bill tomorrow that's expected to be voted on at the state legislature around a COVID-19 response. There is additional money for emergency shelter funding for the state, for healthcare within shelters, and emergency rental assistance for those who would have difficulty paying their rent. The governor has proposed, I believe it's $10 million as housing advocates for Homes for All. We are we are advocating for $100 million, and we'll continue to push that out. So you will be getting email around that. You got one last week, and you'll get another one that asks you personally to pick up the phone. Excuse me, I should say not pick up the phone, to email your state legislator. That is actually how they are receiving most of their questions and comments at this time. So please do know they get those emails, and we do believe it makes a difference as they have to weigh some very difficult priorities right now. We are still hopeful that the legislature will come back and go through a bonding bill. And we are, with our advocates, hoping for $500 million in housing infrastructure bonds for the state of Minnesota. Those dollars are important, of course, in all counties across the state, and in particular could be funding for our 3 family supportive housing developments. So we will stay in touch with you. We are hoping to do some specific video conferencing with some key legislators over the next month or so to continue to push that forward. Not only will that create homes, but it will be part of that infrastructure spending that we hope will help revive the economy during these more difficult times for all of us. So I do hope that in this time that there is a silver lining, and for me that really is this idea that we as a community, as a state and a country, and perhaps even the world, that we see how interconnected we are with each other, and that we begin to really deeply, with that heartfelt leadership, understand that our health, our fiscal, financial, and physical health are dependent upon each other. And we've always said that we all benefit when we all have a home. And I want to thank you for all that you have done for this. So we have been having some technical difficulties, so I'm hoping that I am going to be able to see your questions. We are asking you to type in your questions, and so please do that, and I am going to see what I can do to pick them up here, and we'll give a go run here. So one of the questions that's been in front of us is, how is Beacon coordinating with other organizations who are working to solve homelessness? And so there really has been extraordinary coordination. Hennepin County is very well coordinated. There have been close to daily calls happening around emergency shelter and unsheltered. A lot of focus on single adults, but we remain connected around family shelter with Hennepin County. as well as at the state level. I have reached out to Ramsey County, American House, and Kimball Court. The two SRO properties I mentioned are in Ramsey County, and we have been working to get a direct hotline to the public health there to be able to respond there. And then once again, Homes for All and other advocacy at the state level, we remain connected and working on those. So one of the questions is about the unemployment rate jumping up. Glenn is asking this question, and if the economic recovery is slow, what is the impact on Beacon? To be honest, like others, we are looking at that right now. Some of it is really dependent on the capacity of our donors to continue to support us, and we're so grateful for those of you who are able to do so. We also really do look for that public assistance, whether it's support to Beacon through managing tax credit pricing, or if it's emergency assistance to the residents that we house, unemployment compensation. It was very important, and I thought both emotionally and financially, to see Governor Walz offer up unemployment compensation for people being laid off with the restaurants and bars and other impacts that there may be during this time, and certainly now in a shelter-in-place order. So we are hopeful that our residents will be able to have the resources that they need. But we are continuing to watch our cash flow and really start to imagine what that impact will be. Our finance committee, we have great people on our board, on our finance committee to help us manage that, and we'll be meeting with them next Tuesday to get their advice on what they imagine is going to happen as well. Someone is asking around the housing in North Minneapolis, that it's something that we haven't yet named. So many of you know our program center is located in North Minneapolis, and it's an old Red Owl grocery store that is decades old and in sad shape, to be honest. And so our goal is to be able to build new housing on that site. And that it would be very similar to Vista 44 and Prairie Point, that it would be housing for people with significant barriers, evictions on their records, and other challenges that they might not get accepted into other housing. And not only would they have a deeply affordable home with Beacon, but the wraparound services to help families move forward in terms of employment and education and mental health support, and support for their children in terms of breaking that cycle of poverty for the next generation. So thank you so much for your interest. It is really wonderful to know that everyone is here and a part of it, and we are doing that outreach to city council members in Minneapolis as we move forward. So please look to your congregational organizers, if you're a member of one of our congregations, to know how you might be able to continue to be a part of that. Sorry, I'm needing to figure out my new technology here. All right. All right, great. I think, oops, I see one more question here that I can't quite see. So 1 second, sorry. Let's see if I can get this going here. All right, great. So someone just wanted that really clarification. So on families moving forward, yes, our hosting congregations that have been scheduled to host have then been asked right now to help with meals. And so we are in touch with the hosting congregations about a week in advance. I know that some of you have said, can you help us if we're hosting a few weeks out what to expect, and frankly I can't. This is changing rapidly, and so we are planning about a week in advance, but you will get a general email around the shape to let you know that we are asking congregations to continue to provide the food, breakfast and lunch, and dinner. Dinner is the only one that's delivered in person. And so we will be in touch with host coordinators at our congregations. Right now, we've put all of our families from both Southwest down in our Chaska Program Center and our Minneapolis Program Center in the same hotel. Right now, it is in Eden Prairie. And so because we have a host congregation in Southwest, they're bringing meals for the first part of the week, and then the congregation from Hennepin County is bringing the meals for the second half. But once again, that may change. And so like all of us, we are, or like all of you, I should say, we are needing to adapt on a regular basis based on changes. So we are planning about a week out, and we'll definitely be in touch with you as your hosting week would come forward. And once again, we are grateful for that continued support. Yeah, so we are, someone's wondering if we're able to get some hotels at discounted rates. We've had an offer from one of our congregational members that we are following up on. So we are certainly hopeful, but right now we are paying the standard rate right now. So we will continue to see what is possible as the vacancy rate in hotels goes down, and to see whether some step forward for business reasons or out of community service. So we do look forward to trying to get the best, most cost-effective solution to steward those donations that make that possible. All right, sorry. All right, so I think I am just about done with any questions. So I just want to take a moment to once again thank you. We realize that we may not have gotten to all of the questions, but we will be following up with each of you individually. And so we will also, I think, if we've been successful, have recorded this, and it will be sent out as a link. As well, you will get an email that summarizes this. There'll be a link for a donation if you're able to make one to help us support our expenses and keep Beacon thriving during this difficult time. To be able to, it'll have a link on how to make your advocacy emails to your state legislators, hopefully today or tomorrow. And also to lift up that because so many people are home and we realize there may be an opportunity for education, Craig on our staff, who normally does tours through our properties, is set up to do some virtual education. And so we would be glad to set up some video conferences and some links for readings, things like reading the book Evicted. So do look forward to continued communication from us. And thank you so much for being with us today. Oh, sorry, as I said that and ended up, I realized I had one ending that I wanted to share, and this came from one of our organizers. And when we were talking about asking people to email their state legislators, and it touched me, he said, think of it as for home, from home. So let me end there. Thank you so much.